So today I'm going to do some tandem stacking using CNET and PSTN and the PSTN and some Google Voice trunks. And I'm going to be making the call using this phone right here. And I'm going to be calling this phone and this phone. This phone is on the PBX and it rings on incoming calls. And this phone is directly on the trunk and it'll also ring when I call this phone from this phone after I stack tandems several times. And then this phone I can use to hop on the trunk that the call is going out on from this phone. Since two of my trunks I have split into the same actual trunk, so 8.1 and 8.3 both go to the same physical trunk. So for this video, this phone and this phone will be the calling party, and then this phone and this phone will be the called party.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
And now I'll go ahead and call my other line. That phone is off hook. I'll take this phone off hook now and dial onto the trunk just in case this phone dies. Because it does tend to cut out sometimes. Hello? Hello? Wow, that's quite a delay there. It's a pretty significant delay. And I'll hop onto the trunk here too. Hello? 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 So this is speaking the other way. And I'm talking right now. And I can hear a really, really, really big echo here. It sounds pretty cool, actually. As you can hear, this phone has died and come back on. I'll just hop back onto the trunk. So now I will hang up now. And I'm actually not speaking into a phone right now. But I guess they're picking me up. Well, these two are on speakerphone. But I can speak into this one here. So, I'm just gonna hang up. And I'm gonna hang up from the calling parties. So I'll disconnect this phone and this phone. And you will hear the connection unstacking, basically. All the links that I've... Wow, it's hard to talk when you hear all this echo. But all the links that I've built up will be disconnected one at a time, sequentially. Just like in the old network with tandem stacking on the PSTN. So, it's not quite the same, obviously, but you do get to hear that cool unstacking sound a little bit. I've only built up, I think, 2 or 3 connections here. So, it's not actually quite a lot of tandem stacking, but since this is all voice over IP, there's some latency added in just because of that anyway. So, it does sound pretty cool. Now, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But on one occasion I was able to hear that really cool unstacking. So I'll see if I can get that to work here. Okay. So I'll hang this phone up. And then immediately after, I will disconnect. And then the calling party, both this phone and this phone, will still be connected. So we'll hear what the distant end, the called party, would hear once the calling party hangs up and the connection gets unbuilt. So, here we go. That's interesting. Not sure what that was a dial tone from. So I didn't get it to work quite the way that I had intended it to this time. But on one occasion I did hear several clicking sounds over the course of about 10 or 15 seconds as the connection fully disconnected. So it looks like maybe something halfway disconnected here, and that's where that dial tone came from. So now I'm going to try to build up the connection again.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. password followed by the pound key.
And the phone died on me. Well, we will try that again here.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
And we'll hop onto the trunk here.
The number you have dialed 200-377-810-2
Uh-oh. Accidentally dialed the wrong number. We will try that again here.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
I'll hop onto the trunk here. We'll dial the correct number this time. I forgot to take this off, look. So I suspect part of the echo that you actually hear there is since these are both on speakerphone, and these are two different lines, it'll just come out from one of the phones, go back into the other, and cycle back and forth that way. And you can hear that a little bit. I think you heard 4 echoes there. So now I will attempt, I'll pick up a phone here. So now I will attempt to achieve that tandem unstacking sound by disconnecting. Again, I'll hang up on the calling party first, and I'll see if I can get it to work. So, just for good measure, I'll hang this one up. And so now, this is the called party. That's the only phone that's off hook. Hang this up. And the calling party will now hang up. And we are back to dial tone. And so I dialed 9 and I didn't hear another dial tone. So that was not dial tone for my... Oh wait, this phone isn't on the PBX, never mind. But I think that came all the way back here, because it sounds very clear. So that's interesting. You didn't hear the unstacking sounds there.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
And I'll hop onto the trunk now. So this time, I think I will hang the called party up first and see if results differ when that happens. In the meantime, I'll play around first a little bit. Oh, this phone is not a speakerphone. There we go. So now I'll have the called party disconnect. I might as well speak into a phone. I'll have the called party disconnect. And, so when I hang up, I'm currently using this green 500 here. So when I hang this up, that will drop the incoming connection on the PBX, which means that middle red light there will go out. And then this phone will be the only phone off hook as far as the called party goes. And then I'll hang... Well, it won't matter if this is off hook. I'll hang this phone up then, and then we will hear what happens as the connection drops from the called party's perspective. Well, here goes. And he will now hang up from the called party. Oh, this is interesting. The call timer is still going. Yeah, from the calling party's perspective, it's almost like oh, and they're okay. I guess it finally hung up now. I'm just speaking into this phone here, or maybe this phone dropped out. I think that's what happened. It didn't actually hang up. So when the called party hangs up, the calling party, I guess, they never get anything. They don't hear any unstacking. They don't get a dial tone later. Called party drops out, and the calling party is just talking to themselves here. So I wonder if possibly that has something to do with the fact that this phone on the PBX here is off hook. Otherwise, I mean, that's one possible explanation. Maybe I'll try that again, and I'll hang this phone up as well, and then disconnect that phone, so this is the only phone off hook after that, and see if anything is different.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
And this phone dropped out here. So now I just hear a dial tone. Well, we'll try that again.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
I'll hop on the trunk here just in case that phone drops out again. So these two are the outgoing call from the calling party, and this is the call coming back into the PBX. So to the called party. And I don't really need to take this phone off hook here. I'm just gonna hang up from the called party anyway. So I will disconnect this and then this, and then we will hear what happens over here. Well, that's interesting. It's still the case that nothing appears to happen. It's like nothing ever happened. The call just continues. So this isn't terribly exciting. So in the future, I'm going to hang up from this phone, from the calling party instead, because when I hang the called party up first, that's pretty boring since nothing appears to happen really. It doesn't go to dial tone. You don't hear anything dropping out. You don't hear the connection unstacking. At least you hear that a little bit sometimes when you have the calling party hang up first.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key.
I'll hop onto the trunk just in case. So I think these are louder, but you don't actually hear much of an echo. You don't actually hear much of an echo when you press the touch tone buttons here. Whereas when you dial, now this PBX here does pulse to tone conversion. So those are tones that PBX is producing. So I guess it could be louder than this. However it's being done, those tend to echo more nicely. So now the called party will hang up. So that would be, well, I never actually took this phone off hook again. So all I need to do is hang, wait a minute, no. I'm not hanging the called party up, I'm hanging the calling party up. So I do need this phone off hook. Oh no, this is interesting. Wow. That went on for a good half a minute or so. Actually, probably more, maybe closer to a minute. That was exciting. That happened a couple times. Is that it? Wow. All I can say is wow. Okay. So, so, so this phone, well, actually I could probably hang this phone up because this phone doesn't have a tendency to just drop out randomly. The connection on this must be really cheaply made. It'll just randomly disconnect. So this phone and this phone will get hung up, and then we will hear from the called party's perspective what happens. So it could just be dial tone like the last time. Not very exciting, but I did hear the connection fully unstacking once. It took about 10 seconds. It sounded just like Evan Doorbell's recordings of Tandems unstacking. That was pretty cool, but obviously it seems hard to reproduce now. And there we go. And we do just get hit with dial tone at the end. That's too bad. So just for fun now, I'd like to see how many connections I can stack before I won't be able to stack anymore.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key. password followed by the pound key.
That was interesting. Well, I think I've lost it here. That must have been 3 or 4 connections, and something funky obviously happened there. And keep in mind, I'm just looping back and forth between my Google Voice number and a CNET inbound from the PSTN. And those are the same numbers that I'm using. Obviously, I just have numbers programmed on these buttons. So clearly those numbers have multiple trunks. The nice thing is the Google Voice number that I have, apparently that has multiple trunks. If you go to hangouts.google.com, you can make multiple phone calls at the same time. But when I loop back in and basically log into my Google Voice number again, I get another trunk, and I can keep stacking tandems that way by using multiple Google Voice trunks. So if you have Google Voice on SIP, which is how this is set up here, it looks like you can get multiple Google Voice trunks, even with just one Google Voice number, which is actually really nice. Not just for tandem stacking, obviously, but for other things, I'm sure, as well. So I think that was all I'm going to get out of this call here.
Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password followed by the pound key. Please enter your password.
So at this point, the connection is already extremely unstable. Not even the voice seems to be passing through.
Please try again.
And it looks like we have hit our limit there. I don't know how many trunks I stacked there. I think it must have been 5 or 6, maybe a couple more, but so with Google Voice you can get quite a few trunks just with one number. as demonstrated here. So it looks like Google Voice actually here was the practical limit to, or the bottleneck here for tandem stacking. The CNET inbound was still working, so I don't know how many trunks that particular CNET inbound has, but I could have just kept on going and, you know, say I hit another Google Voice number, I could have just started using that one next, and then kept looping it back through the CNET inbound, or even used a different CNET inbound. Tandem stacking is pretty versatile, and it's fun that way. You can make any combination of numbers work and keep looping back and forth and build yourself a connection. So now I'll do some tandem stacking using some slightly different routing. And for various reasons, I have to use this phone. So that is CNET dial tone again. Now I've called back into PSTN. That's CNET dial tone again. It's PSTN dial tone. CNET dial tone, I will call my other CNET line. Now I can hop on to the line with this phone. So this phone and this phone were the calling party. This is the phone that I picked up. I'll put this on speakerphone as well. So tandem stacking exclusively, well, that sounds pretty cool. That's a cool echo there. That is a cool echo. I'll speak into this phone. So this was tandem stacking going back and forth between CNET and PSTN. And I think there were only a few trunks, so I didn't keep going. And this connection actually sounds really, really cool. It sounds just like in the 1970s. Of course, I wasn't there, but from listening to recordings, it sounds just like back in the 70s long-distance phone calls, especially when you were tandem stacking. We get this really nice echoey effect. And that sounds pretty cool. So, now this call never went out to the PSTN, even via Google Voice. This is just going back between CNET and PSTN. So you can hear that those tones still echo, but they echo in a different way than they did when I was tandem stacking between CNET and PSTN and the PSTN via Google Voice. And this time I was using a different routing. So, different numbers. And the connection sounds different. Well, now I'll hang the calling party up. And they dialed using this phone and hopped onto the trunk with this phone, whereas before I was dialing with this phone and hopping onto the trunk with this phone. But same concept, this and this phone are both a calling party. So I will hang this up. And once I hang this up, that will disconnect from the calling, no, from the called party. No, from the calling party. I was right the first time. The calling party will then disconnect. So, and just to make sure, yeah, the speakerphone is still on. So here we go. There's that dial tone again in the background.